Recording in progress.
Very much. Okay, Borodar, good morning. And it is a good morning, isn't it? Water returned to Conway, which is excellent. My name is Councillor Cheryl Carlisle, and I'm the Chair of the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting, which is a multi-location meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing.
Oh, I think I better turn that on.
Live streamed and recorded.
Have we got feedback here? Can we just have a look what's going on? Technical hitches firstly. It's not coming through yours. Yeah. Patience, please, everyone.
Oh, there's a mic on.
Somebody will have to
We on?
Yeah.
Yes. Hooray. Thank you, everyone. Technical backup. Okay. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available, and for those attending remotely, to choose your language of choice, please. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those attending remotely, please use the raised hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and remote attendees. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return. Can I stress that I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. When I open up the debate to members, I will ask committee members to speak and put their questions first, followed by non-committee members. It would be helpful if members could ask all their questions in one go. Whilst I do not wish to stifle debate, can I remind members that any question should be focused on the subject matter and to avoid repetition. If I feel the length of individual speeches are negatively impacting on the overall time for discussion and becoming unmanageable, I will defer to the committee's rules of procedure, which limits the length of speeches to 5 minutes. Well, before I start, before we begin the meeting today, I'd like to take the time to thank everyone that's been involved in the crisis in Conway over the last 6 days. The selfless volunteers, everyone that's provided water and help to the elderly and vulnerable, and also the engineers for fixing the problems, and our social care staff and the other staff who've helped to keep our nursing homes going, our care homes, and our most vulnerable. On a different note, there will need to be an inquiry, won't there, into the crisis response from Dŵr Cymru. You could not fault the engineers, but the delays in basic organisation like setting up the water stations, it was 48 hours in my particular community. Without the volunteers, it would have been very, very serious indeed for those with health conditions. The priority lists of Dŵr Cymru did not work. There were still people on it that were undelivered as of last night. Cancer patients, dialysis patients, completely unacceptable. security guards turned away mums with little children. That was absolutely unacceptable as well. I think this has brought out the very best in people and in just a few the very worst. There needs to be a clear disaster plan going forward. And finally, a huge thank you to everyone that's volunteered to keep and have kept this county going. Our SLT, our members, and all those volunteers in the community. I know Councillor Charlie's going to give us an update after under urgent items when it comes to that, to say exactly where we are in the planning process. So there we are. But diolch to everyone. Thank you. So we'll start with item 1, apologies for absence.
Yeah, a few apologies this morning. Chair from councillors Sharon Dolman, Chris Hughes, Aaron Wayne, John Roberts and Emily Owen.
Lovely. Thank you, Sally. Any more? Anybody? Councillor Cromway. I imagine
organising collections.
I imagine his recycling bin is pretty full. Yes, thank you, Councillor Cromway. Okay. We'll
Apology from Councillor Austin Roberts as well, Chair.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Councillor Abdul. We'll move on. Did you get all those, Sally? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Has any members got declarations? No. And now item 3, urgent matters. I know it's not scheduled, but this is for Councillor Charlie, the leader, to update us on where we are with disaster management.
Yeah, the Alcadar, the Bardapub. To be fair, you've covered a lot of what I wanted to say, Cheryl. I wanted to add my sincere thanks to everybody who's been involved in rectifying what has been a really serious situation over the last 3 or 4 days, with 40,000 households being affected. I would especially like to thank the members of the public, the community, and many of our councillors who have absolutely gone above and beyond to look after their communities. But as you say, we're moving into the recovery phase now. There are a few isolated areas which still don't have water. We know there's a number of schools that are still affected today. So our focus over the next few days will be bringing that back to normal and stabilising the situation. But clearly, with any major incident, I guess questions needs to be asked about could this be prevented? What was the response adequate? And what happens in the future in terms of how we coordinate things and preventing incidents like that happening again. So I met with the Cabinet Secretary for North Wales Friday evening. We will work closely alongside Welsh Government and Dŵr Cymru to get those answers, ask those questions, and obviously I'll look forward to bringing that back to members in due course. I think it'd be useful move to the Chief Executive just to touch on the work that we as an authority have been doing over the last few days. Cheryl, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Charlie. Yes. The SLT have gone over and above in this. So, Reen, if you'd like to just.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And I'd echo everything both you, Chair, and the leader have said around the response in the community. It's been a really, really challenging time over the past 5 or 6 days. And I'm pretty sure there will be an opportunity to raise concerns as we move through into the next phase. Formally, we're still in the emergency stage. So, we've been meeting over the weekend as a strategic coordination group, multi-agency group. So that was coordinating from last Thursday onwards. So both Jenny and me and Amanda have been attending those over the weekend. But I'd also like to sort of pay tribute to other staff who've been attending meetings at all hours. The tactical group, which was met more often than the strategic group, in order to coordinate responses, and we've had members of staff on each and every one of those, so I'd like to thank them. But really, it's around the response staff. That as always, there is no question with staff. They jump to an emergency. It happened over COVID. We've seen it happen in other storms, etc. And this was no different. Staff have been absolutely amazing, and I'd like to thank each and every one of them for giving their whole weekend, I think, up in order to help the cause. And I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to debrief and have a look back over the past 5-6 days, as Charlie says, around what could have been done better. We will be in conversation now. We will be moving at some point in the next, today or tomorrow, I would imagine, to the recovery stage of the emergency. So that will fall on us as a local authority to lead on that one. The blue lights tend to lead the strategic groups while the emergency is going. So Amanda's agreed to chair that. So that will sit with us. I anticipate there will be some discussion there about any consequences, any need to recover various aspects, be that health, be that business support, that kind of stuff, that really will be the next phase. So hopefully we'll be able to update members. We try and update members. It was a bit of a as I say, it was changing not hour by hour, sort of minute by minute over the weekend. And I apologize for how many emails you've got, but it did feel like it was better to have more information out there so that you could inform residents, because I think that was the thing that we were missing at the beginning of the emergency, wasn't it, around that information getting through to the community. So hopefully that helped. But yeah, I think there will be lessons to be learned, and there will be an opportunity once we go through this and get out of the emergency part of this to consider that. So thank you.
Diolch, Rhyn, and obviously we've got Kat here and just, social care staff. The support to the care homes and nursing homes was amazing. Thank you so much. Now, Councillor Cromwell, you wanted to have a quick word, very quickly.
Yeah, just additional information on the logistical side. Of many people have asked questions about the plastic and stuff remaining at the sites. But just had an email from Simon, because we've been speaking all morning. The tactical advisor from the Wood Company Welsh Water advised that they will undertake site clearance of bottles and other debris from both manned and unmanned distribution points. Work has already commenced at some locations where supply was restored yesterday. This will take a few days, and they want to ensure that supply remains resilient before demobilizing. So the system will roll out. This is still a live incident, as Rhyn has quite rightly said, but our officers are working closely with Company Welsh Water to make sure that we have a smooth system going forward. And I think it's not so much an inquiry, it's more a review, make sure that we improve practices wherever necessary if that's shown to be a deficit.
Thanks, Grommy. I think it needs to be something more than a review, given the seriousness of, so, people could have died, those without. So
Reviews cost an awful lot of money and very often deliver anything. I think we should review what we need to do, make sure we're working closely with all the emergency services, including the police, to make sure we get our systems right.
Yeah, well, I don't think we should downplay anything until we know that everyone has come through this intact, till every household has been checked. But thank you very much for that. And thanks to Simon for the recycling, because that's going to be a massive task, as we all know. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We now move on to item 4, minutes of the informal meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Chairs and Vice Chairs, pages 3 to 5. Could I have a proposal and a seconder from someone that was there? Anyone? Councillor Hannah. Seconder, anyone? Councillor Abdul. Lovely, thank you. Okay, if everyone would like to show. Lovely, thank you. Anyone against? No. Those are carried. Lovely, thank you. Item 5, questions to Cabinet members that are none. So item 6A, external regulatory reports, financial sustainability of Conway and local government, pages 6 to 85. Just a brief explanation of why this report's coming. This report is being presented to this committee following the Council's decision in May to amend the terms of reference for Overview and Scrutiny committees so that any action plan resulting from a regulatory report should be submitted to the relevant scrutiny committee for scrutiny of mitigating activities. And if you could please note that it's the Governance and Audit Committee's role to monitor the implementation of this action plan. So we've got Councillor Charlie's going to introduce, and Amanda Hughes, Strategic Director, will present the report. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Charlie.
Okay, Diolch, Gareth. Before I kind of hone in on the Conwy report, members, I'd like to focus on the national report, give some context. On page 27 of the executive summary, I think it's worth reading this out. It states that, put simply, local government is financially unsustainable over the medium term unless action is taken by those who support and interact with the sector, as well as councils themselves. Though a difficult message, I hope this report helps councils, the Welsh Government and all of those committed to the sector to chart a path to a sustainable future. And clearly, around 70% of our funding comes direct from Welsh Government, so I'm really hoping they take on board what is a very sort of serious position for all local authorities. And it is important to note that it is all local authorities. If you read the individual reports, there's only one or two are deemed to have a clearer pathway, and those are authorities which have substantial reserves, and they're able to use those reserves to shore up their budget, despite the advice of the audit being that reserves should only be used in extremis. But on the bigger picture, it's not just a Welsh issue. You'll note that within England, there are 8 authorities there already had Section 114s served on them. And you'll note a similar report has been done in Scotland, which highlights the financial peril that local authorities are in there. One notable omission is Northern Ireland. Members may or may not be aware that councils in Northern Ireland don't look after social care, education, or homelessness. So those are the areas which are impacting on all councils, and it's just interesting to note that they're not in a financial difficulty because they don't have to deliver those statutory services. In terms of how we're funded, it's really useful to note in there as well that between 2005-06 and 22-23, the NHS Wales received an uplift of 60% in its funding. Over the same period, councils received 11%. So again, there's a really stark difference there about how different services are funded. You'll notice in the main report there is some reference to the funding formula. Members will be very aware I've raised this time and time again. Welsh Audit referenced it, but they've never audited the funding formula. And that's certainly something I think is absolutely essential. Clearly, I feel like a bit of a voice in the wilderness, making the case that it isn't fair. But again, it's really important to note if we were funded per capita at the same level as Gwynedd, we wouldn't have a funding gap over the next couple of years. If we were funded at the same level as Denbighshire, we would have a big surplus. And that's just moving forward, not sort of looking at retrospectively the difference that would have made to us. So when we turn to Conwy, we were the first council in Wales to invite the WLJ peer review in. We were the first council in Wales to invite CIPFRA in. So we have gone through every line of our budget. We've benchmarked with other authorities. We've worked really, really hard to do that. There's lots of talk there about transformation. Unfortunately, there's no real detail as to transform what to what. It's just a word that's bandied around an awful lot. There is another table there which looks at authorities who've used reserves over the last year. You'll note that there's only ourselves and Powys who didn't decrease our reserves. Some authorities have decreased their reserves substantially last year. I think Monmouthshire was around 30%. So I absolutely feel that we're doing everything we can. Members will be fully aware how difficult it is to make further cuts to services on the back of sort of £90 million costs that we've absorbed over the last number of years. But we will continue doing absolutely everything we can, and there's a clear action plan as to how we'll achieve that. But the message is clear on a national level. If the essential services we have to fund our statutory services, if that 70% doesn't keep line with that increase in cost, then it's incredibly difficult to put that whole burden on our taxpayers and/or make further cuts, because as we all know, every service is vital to somebody, Sharon. We've absolutely seen that over this weekend. Our ability to respond to things is absolutely vital in a crisis. So I'll leave it there. Amanda will introduce the report properly, and then I'll be happy to take any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Diolch, Leader. Morning, Amanda.
Morning, thank you, Chair. I won't necessarily add a huge amount to what Charlie has said, but just to I guess make a couple of comments in the sense of, you'll notice that we received the local report a little bit back, and I was very keen that effectively you considered, and I think it's appropriate that you consider the local report along with the national report, because the local report you can see doesn't provide any context of the environment that local government is operating in, and in one sense sort of has a tone of it just being within our gift to solve. Clearly the significantly more detailed national report provides that context and provides that environment we're working in, and as Charlie's already outlined, effectively confirms that local government is unsustainable unless something changes in the overall way that it's funded. But turning to our local report, which is on pages just let me find the page number, pages 11 onwards. It's quite a brief report, you can see, and effectively what it concludes is that although the council has arrangements in place to support its financial sustainability, the arrangements are not effective in addressing the scale of its budget gap and low reserves, which provide a significant risk to its long-term sustainability without transformational change. And the report makes one recommendation, which is that we should find some savings of a scale that allow us to meet the budget gap. So, I think at the end of the day, clearly, as set out in the cover report, absolutely, yes, we agree with the recommendation. We do need to find savings of a scale to identify or fill the budget gap. But I think what the report doesn't perhaps recognise, or the national report maybe recognises, is the scale and breadth of the cuts that the council has already had to implement to meet its financial challenge over the previous years, and that challenge therefore is not quite as simplistic as implied, and is incredibly difficult to do and incredibly complex, given that as an authority we really are operating at sort of the statutory minimum level. Having said that, obviously, clearly, the recommendation accords with the actions and the plans that we were already undertaking, and in the context of that, the response to the action or the recommendation in the report is set out on page 22. Where effectively, in response to the recommendation, then obviously we agree with that, recognizing the how difficult it is to continue to do that, and effectively the corrective action to be taken is essentially for us to implement the resilience plan, which you've already seen, which Cabinet have already adopted, which sets out a range of activity to address the budget gap. And as you're aware, and as we've been discussing through this budget round, that's included the work we've done around statutory minimum service by services, etc., and various pieces of work that are underway to try and hopefully reconfigure services, etc., to find more significant savings for the future. So the work's ongoing, and you'll be au fait with all of that via various other reports. But essentially, as I say, all it was, we're just recommending, I guess, what one could argue was a fairly straightforward and observational need to find savings, which we were already in train with. So happy to take any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Questions, members, please. Councillor Louise first.
Borodar Pal. Yeah, it definitely has to be seen within the national UK context of the demand, really. So we always talk about not having enough money, but the focus really needs to be on what on earth is happening in society, where over the last 20 years we've had such a vast increase in the number of looked after children, in the number of children with ALN. Those two things really stick out for me. What's happening to our children, essentially. And so I really appreciate that it's not easy for anyone. But obviously focusing.
Councillor Louise, can you pull the microphone
Yeah.
nearer to yourself? Thank you.
So focusing on Conway itself, obviously the number one recommendation is a hard one, isn't it? Because essentially it says we need transformational change, and that's a word that's bandied around a lot, and I'm not quite sure what that means. Is transformational change doing something big, like amalgamating with another council? Is it closing down a major school so we don't have so many school places? We've done transformational change in terms of bringing in social care all the back office staff, the admin, and I've been on many meetings about that. But I'm trying to work out what is it that they mean by transformational change, and have they given you an example of other councils doing something that solves all their problems?
I would make the observation, as you say, that it's an easy word to bandy about. I think we've been, discussing with audit rails really about our desire for them to share good practice with us and to identify where we can potentially look and learn from. In our detailed report, you'll see that there's a little bit of commentary which I don't agree with actually, which is a sort of almost like an implication that because we've balanced the budget previously through individually small budget reductions, that somehow that's flawed as an approach, which I don't quite sort of see that, but nonetheless, yeah, let me put it this way: I've not been we've not been presented with a huge swathe of examples of where we can look, but nonetheless, we continue to have those discussions with Audit Wales around how they can help support us in identifying that good practice. I think sort of moving away specifically from sort of the Audit Wales stuff, I guess what strikes me, and this is a challenge for us now as an authority, isn't it, is because we've got to the stage where in it as such we believe and we think we're at rock bottom in the context of the services we provide, in the sense that I mean that we don't want to cut or reduce the level of service anymore to our residents, and that's important. So I think in that context we have no choice but to look at how we structure and how we deliver internally, if you know what I mean. So I know there's talk often in this committee about frontline services and back room services, but I don't think it's as simple as frontline services and sorry, frontline people and back room people. I think essentially in knowing what we want to deliver on the ground, I think we have to look much wider about how do we organize ourselves and how do we direct our resources, how do we utilize IT, how do we do all of those things, and that's significantly more challenging because it's incredibly complex across the organization, isn't it? But I guess we're in the ballpark of needing to do that, and I guess that therefore chimes with that word of transformation, but I think it's very difficult and very challenging because you're trying to do that kind of stuff at the same time as actually dealing, as you say, with that increased in demand at the front door, which is inevitably absorbing everybody's time and all the limited resource we have. So, I do think it's very challenging. I don't think it's straightforward. I appreciate I'm not answering your question here in the sense I don't have though we're going to do X, Y, Z, etc. But I think there are a whole range of activities which we've started, haven't we? There's a strategic school group looking at how we look at that. We've got an asset management strategy coming soon, which will hopefully help in terms of how we manage and move forward with our buildings. Obviously, we've moved forward with the OAS strategy in terms of trying to reduce our footprint in that way. We've got various administrative reviews going on and a whole host of other activities. So I think we're starting doing all of those individual things that we need to bring together in a more holistic way. So I wouldn't want you to think that we're not starting to have those detailed discussions about what are some of those more significant changes we can make. IT obviously is another area we're trying to pursue in terms of looking at the use of AI and the use of digital technology, etc., to reduce administrative burden and to perhaps, again, use our resource more effectively. So a whole host of strands of activity which we need to bring together. But as I say, going back to Audit Wales, we're continuing to have those debates with them about how they can help us identify good practice. So I appreciate I've rambled a bit, but I hope it helps.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Charlie wants to come in as well, and then Ree. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add that, I am a big fan of benchmarking, looking at what other authorities are doing. Probably have mentioned before that the dental practice that I was a partner in was the first in North Wales to become fully computerized, which in about 95, 96, which is incredibly expensive, but there was a clear, if we invest in this, we can save time. It was there. I don't see other authorities doing anything. We attended an in-person presentation in North Wales. We were one of the 4 authorities to give a presentation. I actually thought we were doing far more than everybody else, but I think you have to look at a national level. There's been talk about social care and a national system to look at that. The UK government's talking about 3 years. Welsh government's a similar time system. And I do think you have to be really careful. Refer back to that computer system. There were three suppliers. The one we luckily chose was the only one that didn't go bust a year later. We would have been left with a 36 grand system that nobody would look after. So I think the word is bandying around a lot. I don't think there's a really clear that this is what could work for you and this could save you money. We've also got the Corporate Joint Committee in North Wales. I was appointed vice chair of that committee on Saturday. There's going to be a sort of suite of options coming forward as to what the Corporate Joint Committee can do. But I think that's more about economic development than saving money. But I did make the case at the meeting with ministers that are there options to look at ways we can share resources and save money, because the situation we're in, it is no stone unturned. But we have statutory duties. CIPFRA estimated it's around 2,000. We have to carry out these duties. The demand, as Louise pointed out, is inexorable. And again, I refer back to Northern Ireland where they're not having those issues because they're looking after the things that our residents see as council things, your pottle parks and your bins and stuff like that. They actually don't look after highways either, actually thinking about it. But anyway, maybe I need to go back home and get an easier job. But no, it is difficult, but it's not a problem we can solve by ourselves, clearly. So thank you.
Deal, leader. Reen, quickly.
Yeah, very, very quickly. And just to give some comfort around this, we will be bringing, in accordance with the request from FROSC around bringing all these projects together. So that will come, I think, to the next meeting, which is around. I think we've included it within the 6-month performance report. So hopefully that will give you comfort around what has been done, but also we are also in conversation around how we bring the other stuff forward. So there will be an opportunity, within the next few months, I hope, to have that open discussion. That really lines up with what CIPFRA's advice has been. So we've asked Audit Wales, but also we have engaged with CIPFRA, who have been working with local authorities across the country who are implementing transformation plans. So it's trying to see what works really. And I don't think there's anything that we could do that could transform everything straight away. As Amanda said, there's a lot of things that we can do. What's the difficult part of it is to put a pound sign next to it as to what actually that means in terms of savings. Because ultimately, if you do less, yes, it might be a little bit more effective and efficient, but that is the decision that will then affect the services you provide. So I guess there's always that balance. But yeah, so the next report on the six-month performance report should have, well, it does have, bringing all these projects together in one place for you to have a look at.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you very much, Reen. So we've got speakers in. We've got Gareth, Andrew, Paul, then Anne. So starting Gareth, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, I think we're all agreed that it's simply not fair how the funding between the councils is sorted out and how so much funding is going to the NHS, yet there's not the equivalent funding coming to ourselves to support the social services, and there doesn't seem to be that joined up thinking. Nevertheless, I think we're in the position where we have to accept that the funding we get is the funding we get. And our job is to actually deliver a balanced budget. And with the emphasis, I would say, on deliver and not just set, which is what's happened over the past few years. I had presumed there would have been somebody here from Audit Wales so that we could scrutinise them on the validity of their comments and the report. Because, from what the tone I'm getting is that, yes, and it's very similar to the tone I was getting when we were with the peer review and with CIPFRA. Yet we know all this, but they don't understand us. They don't realise what we've been through and they don't realise what we've done. As far as I can see, Welsh Audit Office are actually based in Abergele, so they are relatively local. They are part of the government, so they should know what's going on. So if they have been unfair to us, I think we should challenge back, and we should officially challenge back to them. So whether we'll get an opportunity in audit to actually question them and make our own minds up. But, you know, I've got to be honest, when I look at the comments they put down there, I think, yeah, it's pretty fair for the position that we're actually in that, you know, I know, Amanda, you said that you didn't think they were being fair when they said that we'd managed to do what we've done so far by moving small amounts around, and we've had that discussion. You know I was against salami slicing, and that we need some bigger changes and things like that. And I get frustrated that we haven't started some of these bigger projects and looking at bigger things earlier. But it's easy for me to say that and much more difficult to do, so I acknowledge that. And I'm wondering, you know, are they coming from a point of, yes, that we haven't actually hit our budgets? Since I've been on the council, we haven't actually hit our budgets. Is that their criticism? Are they criticising us because we haven't done any large projects and really looked in depth at the way we're doing? You know, I know last week, Cabinet Member Chris Cater, you asked me to what my views were as to what the budget should be in the council tax, and I think it was decided then that that wasn't the place to scrutinise what I wanted to do and my ideas, and this probably isn't the place either. But you know, I didn't get the chance to respond then, but I would say, Chris, feel free to ask me in full council, and I'd be more than happy to explain what I think the council tax and what the plan should be. But I think, you know, are they getting at one of the mistakes I think we're making is a little bit like you did last year in committee of saying, look, let's cut education's budget by, I can't remember, was it 6 or 7%? And without any detailed explanation as to the effects and how that should be done. And, you know, we need those long-term plans and detailed financial plans as to the effects of what we're doing. You know, you've touched on, Amanda, the need for that asset management strategy. We need that in place as soon as possible, so we know what we're doing and where we're going. You know, it's taken a while to get that medium-term financial strategy in. We need to be working over a number of years rather than trying to work from year to year. And it is difficult because it's firefighting then all the time, but we need that longer-term vision. But without being able to question audit wells, is that what they're getting at? And I have read the national strategy, and I do know that every council is really, really struggling with this. So we're not the only ones. We don't stand out there, and we have made a lot of progress. But, you know, if they're being unfair, we need to call them out. And if they're not being unfair, then we need to accept it rather than almost grudgingly accept it and go, oh, well, they've said what they've said, but we think they're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify, with education, it was actually in cash terms of £3.9 million increase last year, which equated to 4.9%. It was 5% less than I asked. So that was the notional cut, but that's the situation over the last 2 years. The response to WLGA to the report was pretty robust. The 22 local authorities thought it was a bit oversimplistic.
Chair, I can't hear online. I'm sorry. Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm just saying the WLGA, it wasn't received well. They thought it was oversimplistic and didn't really highlight the real issues.
Can you talk into your microphone, Charlie? Just thanks.
Yeah, so there has been a response at WLGA level. I presume they'll come to the Audit and Governance Committee, or no, the Welsh Audit. Yeah, so there will be an opportunity there, Gareth. But, you know, in terms, again, I'm more than happy to have a meeting outside these meetings, discuss any ideas you might have. If members can see services that they feel we should cut or are unaffordable, I'd be more than happy to hear those ideas in a constructive manner.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. We now go to Councillor Andrew online. Morning, Andrew.
Morning, Chair. You can hear me clearly, yeah?
Yep.
Thank
super.
you. Just a couple of quick little comments to start with. The savings that they were talked about, the small savings, well, they were I remember rightly, 60 items of £50,000. That's £3 million worth of salami slicing. Well, I think that's well done to officers for identifying them to start with. So that's not issue. Asset management that Gareth mentioned, that's going to be a long haul. It's not a silver bullet or a gold bullet. It's not going to save us a fortune all the time. It is the right way to go, okay? But I believe that, but don't expect instantaneous changes. My main question is, and I've listened to Amanda and I listened to Charlie, and I totally agree, and I've read the reports, and I agree with quite a lot that Gareth has said. But the one thing I would say is that we're quite clear that the financial and administration burden is a lot of it's caused by this funding gap that Charlie alluded to, and the formula itself. And we've got an overburden of older people. We need obviously a lot more care, a lot less children. I'd like to see Audit Wales do a review on the whole funding formula for all 22 councils to see where there is things that are not treating the settlement in a just way for that council. So I'm not sure if we've ever done it or they've ever done it, but I think we should be asking Audit Wales for that. So if I can ask Charlie or Amanda to comment on that, and if not, maybe a proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Andrew.
I mean, yes, obviously we can go back and say to Audit Wales that we believe that would be a worthwhile piece of work for them. I think in fairness to Audit Wales, it's not for Audit Wales to determine policy, and it's therefore not for Audit Wales to determine how money is distributed across how Welsh Government choose to distribute its money. Having said that, I think it is, and it would be potentially appropriate for them to observe that the formula is very out of date, that the data in it isn't up to date, that it doesn't appear to work. They could make those kind of observations. I suspect and I fear that they're reluctant to do that, and obviously it's not, again, it's not for us to determine the Auditor General's work programme. That's for him as to focus it on what he sees fit. But yeah, certainly I think we can absolutely make back the observation that we think it would be useful for them to further highlight issues around the formula, but I think they would only do that within the remit of their powers, obviously.
Thank you very much for that, Amanda.
Can I just come back on that? Can I come back on that?
Go on.
Just very quickly. Yeah, I realise that Audit Wales probably not their remit, but simply by asking about social services, various different spends and costs, benchmarking. Like Charlie, I come from a business background, and if you benchmark things and you can compare it to other authorities, you can see the discrepancies and maybe where the unfairness is. So I think that wouldn't be beyond Audit Wales, and I think really we should be either proposing it or strongly recommending that other councils get together and we benchmark ourselves to be able to identify. And if we can't measure it and they can't measure it, we can't do anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Reen just wants to pop in here now.
It's like Councillor Andrew's read our minds, because we've raised this on a few occasions with Audit Wales over the past 18 months around how valuable benchmarking is, and also the position that Audit Wales are in order to undertake that kind of work and get a consistent database across Wales. It's like everything. You want to know, it's great when you have benchmarking, you high up the list, but actually what you want to know, if you're low on the list, why, and how can you go up the list? And it's not a competition, is it? It's all about getting information and providing the best possible services you can within the resources that you've got. So we have made that point. So we'll follow it up again, Andrew, and I think it is a very, very important point that what we need is something that would add value, real value to us, and I think data of that type would really help us.
Yes, Brendan, thanks for that. And we need the extra money from a fair funding formula to offset the amount of financial burdens and administration burdens. So I'll be very keen to see what happens on that. Thanks very much.
Diolch, Councillor Andrew. In the chamber, Councillor Paul.
Yeah. Just deal firstly quickly with the wider context, and as I've reminded people quite regularly, the Welsh government, the UK government, and the Conway government we have at the moment, that is, if you like, the settled will of the electorate until elections take place. That is the context in which we live. And I'm very conscious in terms of public services. If you like, the most recent statement on that was obviously Rachel Reeves' budget statement. And the key thing for local authorities, public services to take out of that, because this
Paul, bring your microphone closer to you, please.
because this impacts onto the Barnet consequentials, is that after this year, UK government is projecting only a 1.3% increase in public services. That's her statement. So the situation is, unless there's something dramatic happens, not going to change significantly, and the indications are it's going to become more difficult. So that for me is the big context. And you know, the next election is not until May 2006 for the Welsh government. So that is the reality in which we live. In the wider context as well, I'd just like to say something about our own self-belief, and I challenge myself on this. I definitely challenge other councillors, and I challenge the political and the professional leadership of this council. It comes down to a matter of self-belief. Can we look at the facts, reach the hard conclusions, make the very difficult decisions? And I do question that. I really do question that, because even where we've made difficult decisions, and as I keep on saying, I've voted for the big council tax increases. I've voted for the £23.5 million of cuts since I was elected. So I've gone along with all of that, and I've voted with it because I think it's just a gesture if you vote against. In that situation, I don't think we are doing enough. I just do not think we're doing enough. And the reason I say that is as much because even when we make the difficult decisions and fellow councillors vote for those difficult decisions, in the public domain, I'm not sure all councillors do own up to those decisions. I definitely own up to those decisions. I'll have a public meeting beginning of February, and I will say, yeah, I voted for that. Yeah, I voted for that. But not everybody does, and I think that's why I doubt our self-belief to some extent. On the specifics, in paragraph 6.1 of the report, it says, it is also the case that we may need to earmark specific one-off monies, e.g. to create capacity or to spend to save schemes, and any such calls on resource will be considered in accordance with financial delegated arrangements. Now, I don't have a means of proposing, but I would want to see that what's being said here, and Amanda can clarify this, we will continue to make decisions, that's the political and professional leadership, using the delegated authorities that we give them to do that, to make changes which enable us to do things differently, make savings. That's fine, I haven't got a problem with that. My problem then becomes, I want that information when those delegated decisions are made to come into the public domain as soon as possible so that they can be scrutinized. So what I would like to see is certainly on a 3-monthly basis, say, those decisions that the political and professional leadership are taking are reported to us and reported to the public so that we can scrutinize what is happening to try and get a better grip of the situation than we've got at the moment. Because our biggest problem, and I confirm with Gareth on this, that since I was elected, whatever budget's been set, we've overspent it. And we've overspent it, and we're told we're overspending it because demand is greater than we analyzed, anticipated. Now, we've got to get a grip of that. We've got to start setting budgets which are realistic in terms of that demand, and we've got to report back very regularly. Now then, under that sentence I read out, what we're being told is politically and professionally, will you use our delegated powers to make decisions to manage the situation? I really want to know the detail of that, the specific detail of that on a regular basis so I can scrutinise that.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I don't know who's going to answer that, whether it's Charlie or Amanda.
Yeah, well, I can answer it sort of in the technical perspective. So I guess yeah, I probably hadn't anticipated causing a sort of a suggestion of something untoward in the context of that final sentence. So all I was meaning by that final sentence ultimately was that, you know, in the current delegated arrangements, for argument's sake, if we were to want to make a decision to exercise the powers that are given to the local authority as a whole to utilize capital. What I had in mind, I think probably when I wrote that was we have an annual authority from Welsh Government to utilize capital receipts for revenue activity where it is specifically for the purposes of driving efficiency. So for argument's sake, if we wanted to appoint a post, for argument's sake, to support some specific activity which was aimed at yielding savings, and then we would do that within accordance with the delegated arrangements. So just for everybody's confirmation, what those delegated arrangements are is that I would have the authority as the Section 151 officer up to £100,000. Between 100 and 500,000, it is a cabinet decision, in which case it would obviously be in the public domain, and if it was over £500,000, it would actually be a council decision. So that's all I had in mind. So I guess in the context of that scrutiny side of it, obviously anything above £100,000 anyway would come to cabinet and therefore would be scrutinised through that process. Anything that was in my operational delegated limit, then obviously that would show up, for want of a better phrase, in the quarterly monitoring report, because there would be a environment that would be in that report, which obviously you could scrutinise that way. I can also ensure that when we report on the resilience plan and the implementation of the resilience plan, if there's appropriate commentary around, you know, some utilisation of resources, we can obviously refer to that within that. Does that feel like it provides you that opportunity?
Oh, I suppose if you're going to be specific, and it's not a criticism of you, Amanda, at all, in terms of the information, you're going to be specific in those quarterly reports on what particular delegations you've taken. You've referenced using capital receipts for revenue purposes. Well, that's fine. But again, my feel is, and it's an intuition, is that's not going to be enough to, you know, in the first quarter report of the next budget, us seeing further overspending. And that's my concern. what I want to see in the first quarter report for 2025-26, that we are on top of our budget. We're on top of it, and whatever decisions we make, however big the cuts this year, however big the council tax increases, it is as accurate a statement as is possible of future demand and the resources that we need to meet that future demand. Because otherwise, we're sort of being dishonest about the reality. We're setting budgets knowing we're going to overspend those budgets, and then the problems just kick down the road. And I just don't think that's what the public wants, or I don't want that. I want to be as tied down as possible. This is the money we're going to spend, even if it means big council tax increases, big budget cuts, and then we just implement that effectively.
Thank you for that, Councillor Paul. Just before I come to Councillor Charlie, this report's called the Financial Sustainability of Conway. Have we had apologies from Councillor Nigel, the Cabinet Member for Sustainable Economy? No? Anyone? No? Okay. Councillor Charlie, if you want to answer Councillor Paul, that would be great.
Yeah, just in response to a couple of things, Councillor Paul. Firstly, I read a lot of council reports for various councils. I think the level of information we get in Conway is exceptional, far in excess of what is supplied at other councils. In terms of setting realistic budgets, I think it's a balance, isn't it? It's really, really important to note that the areas of overspend we have are demand led. And you're looking quite far into the future. We've seen turmoil in lots of things. There was predictions about interest rates coming down, which hasn't happened. The cost of living crisis is clearly not helping us. The housing numbers still say high. So it is an estimate. It's not an overspend. It's over demand that's driving that. It's not that we have a certain amount of something we have to spend. So I get that. And there's a balance there, isn't there? But we couldn't go out and say we want to make council tax 20% just to make sure there's enough in those budgets. We have to try and drive that spend down. And that we're laser focused, that we need to try and keep as best we can within those budgets. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but there's a balance here, and there always has to be a balance. It's something I think I should have touched on earlier, really, is the importance of having multi-year settlements. You know, to be clear, if you're predicting that where you're going to be in a couple of years' time, we've seen a massive change in the last year from where we thought we were at the start, where we are now. Making change costs money. We've seen with the difficult process in our schools, redundancies cost money. If we were in a position where we felt, right, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you do it, and then you suddenly either have a change of government, have a change of policy, and suddenly you've got more money, well, you know, oh dear, we've wasted all that money. We've seen proposals to close leisure centres in certain areas. Now, you can do these things, but they all have an impact. They have a really serious impact. So we need a longer plan. If we're going to make a longer plan, we need some idea what that medium financial term is. And I'd also make the note that pre-COVID, we used to get our predictive settlement in October and a final settlement in December. Now that's now moved to getting it in December, getting it in February. So that timescale is incredibly challenging. And that's obviously quite complex. It's Welsh Government get the money from UK government, and we're at the bottom of the pile there. But if you're going to predict sensibly over a number of years, then you have to know what your income is over those number of years. And the rest of it is a bit of guesswork. I've always been self-employed. I've always run my own business, but you could work those figures out really, really closely. You didn't give stuff away for free, and it wasn't such huge costs of money. You know, one child looked after could be 30k a week. You know, these sums are huge, so you can plan to the nth degree, and suddenly something lands on your lap, and you've got to deal with that. We've seen with Storm Babbitt, we've seen with this weekend, our policy excess in inverted commas is £570,000. So it is incredibly difficult, and I think we just need to be cognizant of that. And we have to be sensible. Everything is a balance, isn't it? And what we take from our residents and what services we provide them. And that is a really, really difficult, challenging thing to do.
Sorry, can I just very
briefly, Councillor.
But I think we're not acknowledged in our underestimate of demand. We know we're going to have severe weather incidents over the next 12 months. All the information indicates that. We know, we've seen it the last few days, that we know because of the level of the deterioration of the infrastructure across all areas, and this is not being critical of Welsh Water, it's over all areas, infrastructure will collapse and there will be problems because we've allowed it to go decline so low. Again, because we haven't invested over the years, not just Conway, in Wales and the UK, invested in our children, we are now reaping the effect of that. And the effect of that is, and we can estimate it now, that we will have children looked after whose needs are so great that they're going to cost us £20,000–30,000 a week to care for them. We know that now. We just need to confirm that when we're drawing up a budget and the difficult decisions that we have to make, rather than underestimating that, which is what we've done certainly consistently since I got elected in May 2022.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paul. Okay, we now go to Councillor Anne online.
Thanks, Chair. And let me know if I need to turn my microphone off, my camera off rather. Perversely, I really welcome the publication of these two reports. I'm more than disappointed that we've had the Conway one for 6 months, and certainly as a group leader, never mind a backbencher and a member of Finance and Resources, that I haven't seen it before this report was published, and that's 6 months lost opportunity for me, particularly in terms of informing our approach to this year's budget. But notwithstanding that, I think these two reports are a wake-up call for us, but not just us. I think it's a wake-up call for Welsh Government. I mean, I think Charlie has done his very best to
You want to turn your camera off, Councillor Anne? If you could just turn your camera off, it started to fade again.
Yeah, no problem.
Right. Okay.
Charlie's done his very best, and I commend him to challenge the funding formula. And in some respects, that's like just hitting your head against a brick wall. But I do recognise, I think, his efforts have paid some dividend this year round in terms of the settlement that we got. So, I mean, I think now is the time for action. In terms of ourselves, I don't think we are, despite all of the hard work that we do, or officers do, and potentially, as far as I understand, cabinet members do, I don't think we're robust enough in our process for setting our budget and planning for sort of the longer term. And part of that is about we're also not inclusive enough. You know, there are 55 members of this council, and apart from a couple of meetings that public meetings that we have to have these sorts of debates, there's very little involvement beyond that. I mean, this year to date we've had two-hour workshops, and that only identified short-term sort of £3 million of savings. So I think the points that are made within the Welsh Audit report for Conway, to be fair to them, are absolutely spot on in my view, and we need to act upon them. And I think part of my frustration that you'll have heard over the speeches that I make is our pace of change is just not fast enough. And obviously our inclusiveness is not fast enough. Now, that withstanding, we are hugely challenged by the money we're given and the demand that we've got, as others have said. So amongst the actions I think we need to take are, in terms of Welsh Government, I think we need to rattle their cage. You know, the NHS has done it quite successfully, and I don't deny them that the money, the funding they've got, whether it's actually solving anything is another question. But I think Welsh Government, we need to write to Welsh Government, to the First Minister, and obviously put our view in terms of the incredibly impossible position that they're putting us in and the impact on our communities. And I think we should demand a local meeting with the local government minister here, with our councillors, so that we can have that face-to-face debate and invite Welsh Audit along to that. I think they owe it to us and we owe it to ourselves. I think the other thing that I recommend that we do, and this is a really interesting point for me, when I read the reports, there's only one council out of 22 that appears from this report to be actually actually meeting the longer term planning and sustainability, financial sustainability challenge. And that is Carmarthenshire County Council, because on page 74, the Welsh Audit Office say that Carmarthenshire have embedded their transformation approach and it's providing a strategic framework to positively support its financial resilience. They're not saying that about any other council. And they also go on to say that they've embedded longer transformation agenda approach, sets out a strategic framework for its long-term financial sustainability. That, in essence, is the mirror that the Welsh Audit Office is putting up to all 22 councils in Wales. Now, there are only 2 councils, and we're one of them, where I can see, if I've read it correctly, that there's the word risk used a number of times. And I think we in Conway need to recognise that and actually face into it and actually accelerate our actions to actually approach it and resolve the sort of concerns that are actually there by the financial sort of regulators. They're not going to tell us what to do. Amanda has quite rightly said that's not their job, it's not what they're paid to do. Welsh, the WLGA perhaps has got a role here that I'm not sure that is really being fully explored and utilised, because they should be working on our behalf on the bigger issues. We fund them, as does Welsh Government. And obviously SIPFA, I mean, we've had sort of SIPFA in, but I have to say, as a bank bencher, I don't really understand what the SIPFA benchmarking has actually told us, how it's informed any of the reports that we've got, because none of these things here in Conway seem to be shared at the right time to actually enable all the brains of all the councillors who are involved in making all these decisions to make the right decisions and set us on this financially sustainable path. So I would really like us to write to Carmarthenshire and invite their strategic director, or whoever heads up their transformation programme, because they obviously, it would appear, to have got it right. And I think we need to have actions and we need to have the pace of change. And I would really welcome that I would have liked our resilience plan to be attached to this report, because I think we need to re-examine it in the light of some really critical feedback, but friendly feedback. They're not doing it to sort of expose us or, you know, humiliate us. They're doing it to try and help us, and equally Welsh Government. So I think it would be really useful for us personally to re-examine our resilience programme and actually really understand what actually is meaningfully happening to make a difference and to actually influence sustainability, and particularly in the longer term, because the longer term is, as I understand it, 10 to 15 years. But really what this audit report is saying for Conway is they were really only looking at short-termism, which is either year to year or a couple of years beyond. We need to fundamentally review what we're doing, but we can't do it alone. I mean, just to sort of summarise that, I agree with Charlie. We can't do this alone. We can't fix this ourselves. And that's why we need to demand some interface and intervention with Welsh Government. And I think we should do it locally, whether we do it locally as North Wales or whether we do it locally as Conway Council. But I know there's always debate and, you know, leaders meet and all the rest of it, but that's not solving anything for us here in Conway. So I think we need some actions, and I'm quite happy to propose some of those as we get to the end of this discussion. Thanks, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Anne. Yes, if you could sum that up at the end, and we'll look for a seconder. We've got Councillors Abdul, Councillor David, and Councillor Gromway. Councillor Abdul online. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Yes, I have issues with, you know, audit of Wales is mentioning savings. What does matters? We're not saving anymore. It's all cuts, and they know very well. So if they would have tell us to cut more, that would have been easier for us. Because I'll give you an example. Over the years, when we used to have weekly bin collection, it's gone to monthly. It's cut on service. When our needy children in the school can't get special needs help, that's cuts to the service. When our elderly patient can't get the treatment they want, is cuts. So I suppose audit wells does get paid by Welsh Assembly, and they can't be neutral, and they should be neutral. I think that they do their best, but if you look at the neutral points, where there's a way, where there's a will, there's a way. If you have funding, you can deliver the service. We are giving funding. Well, we've been giving funding according to the Barnett formula uh, because we are less populated than other counties. But what they don't realize is our needs are more per head because of elderly, because of the special needs and so forth. So funding's been flowed, and it's been said many times. So it's not about savings, it's about cuts. And if the Welsh government and Welsh Audit recognise that we need to cut, then all well. You can't blame the officers, you know. I understand the members wants regular update and all this. That's putting more pressure on officers. We're all doing our best, but it's the end of the day, it's going to be down to funding. I mean, I have one question, Chair. Apparently, according to Welsh Audit's report, an average Band D council tax level raised by 66% over the years. Is that just for Connaught, or is it for Welsh as a whole? Can Amanda answer that, please? Because, you know, the tax goes up, the service going down.
Councillor Abdul. Amanda, did you want to?
Yeah, I think that is in the national report, Councillor Abdul. So I take it. I'm not sure where. I take it that's a
national trend
figure. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but thank you for that. So yeah, if it is, so we're not the only one, and I don't think majority of us are in the same boat because of lack of funding from Welsh government.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Abdul. You raised some really good points there. We now go on to Councillor David, then Councillor Gromway. Councillor David online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I did ask at the time of the last budget that we make sort of contacts with neighbouring authorities, Denbighshire and Gwynedd and Anglesey, about working together on economies of scale. I would like to ask the leader, has there been any progress on that? We could save money by providing by joining in and providing services together. Has any progress been made on that? That's one way forward to sort of getting as financially sustainability. But the other point I want to make is that Audit Wales and have made their points in that, you know, maybe there are too many people employed in Audit Wales. There has been an explosion in bureaucracy. You know, I know it's happened all over the country, particularly in Wales. You know, and we need more people on the ground doing the jobs. Really, more people emptying the bins and doing the things that the residents want. So can we look at cutting the bureaucracy? And one final question, I'd just like to ask the chief executive and Charlie, how many committees are they on? And does it do this council any good? Because we're not doing that well, are we really? All these committees and bureaucracy and subcommittees and meetings about this does actually achieve anything? Because from our perspective, we're not doing as well as the other authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. You'll be pleased to know you raised a proper chuckle in the chamber there with the Wales Audit Office being overstaffed. So I'll ask I'll ask Charlie to come in with the answers to 1 and 3. I don't think he wants to comment on the Wales Audit Office. Councillor Charlie.
No.
No.
Yeah, so the Chief Exec and I had a number of meetings with our counterparts in Denbighshire, and we did ask sort of heads of service at that level to have conversations about where there may be opportunities. I think my focus, David, would be on looking at the opportunities of the Corporate Joint Committee. As I say, I got appointed vice chair. There's certainly, you know, we're not alone in this. Every authority in North Wales is feeling the strain. So that there is a real desire to look at areas where we could save money, and thinking things like procurement and stuff. There are obviously things where a degree of local knowledge is essential, but there are other things that don't matter. So it's certainly something that would be really keen to explore. In terms of the work that I do, yeah, it is busy, but I don't think there's anything where I attend that I shouldn't be there to represent Conwy. And again, we talk about the ability to work with other authorities, but it's really important you've got a strong voice, making sure that the residents of Conwy are represented, and that we're getting a fair deal essentially. And I do feel I've done more the last few years to get change within the funding formula because I've done it factually and I've argued about fairness rather than we just don't get enough money. And so, yeah, I think it's vitally important that's done. And again, I'm independent. I have no political allegiance to anybody. I just want to do the best for our residents, and whatever way we can do that, I'll continue to explore those avenues.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. Oh yes, if you want to, Reen.
Yeah. Just as the question asked from my view as well, I guess from an officer level, there have been quite regular conversations with colleagues across the north. Actually, we've had numerous meetings, including joint meetings with Section 151s in order to discuss proposals that everyone were looking at. So I think that's very useful. Also, as Charlie said, there's been engagement specifically with Denbighshire around what the art of the possible is, and the heads of service of each authority have got together as well. So it's not, the only thing I would say is joint working doesn't necessarily lead to savings. My experience of quite extensive joint working projects over the years have meant that there's a lot of time, resources go into setting something up, and actually you may end up costing more. So you need to be really careful around the projects you choose in order to do it for the purpose of efficiencies. Now there are options, and there will be options moving forward. I think, as Charlie mentioned, around the CJC, because I think that may give us a more of a global, regional body to look at various functions that we have. So I think that is definitely something that we will be exploring further as the next couple of years come, because you know that its remit is pretty narrow at the moment, and I know there have been discussions with Welsh Government about CJCs generally. On the regional meeting point, yes, I think we've made the point that maybe how those work are always under review. They're never static, but they are, as things stand, incredibly important meetings for us to attend and give Conwy's voice to, because they have any regional impacts impact us, be that economic, social care, etc. They are incredibly valuable, that our voice and actually the influence that we're able to give on those committees and groups actually have led to some change in the past. So I think that there is a balance. I agree. It is difficult at times. It's time consuming, but we need to make sure that Conwy's voice is heard regionally, loudly, in these meetings.
Diolch, Reen. We've got Councillor Gronwy and Councillor Sean. Then we're going to the recommendations. Councillor Gronwy.
Thank you, Chair. Been a lot of interesting discussions and comments made. I think we've also heard a lot of repetition of what we've been in the past and where we're going forward, about consultation, about involving members. But at the end of the day, the Wales audit have made a statement. Whether you agree with it or not is entirely up to you. They are there to assess our delivery in line with other authorities. To compare Conwy with Carmarthenshire, I think, is a bit of a misnomer. At the end of the day, it's Welsh Government that decide how we are funded, and it's up for the Welsh Government to account for how they decide how much local government get, and it's up for the members of the Assembly to challenge that if they feel that local government is not getting their fair share. Somebody made a comment that Betsy seems to be better at lobbying than we are, or the health board seems to be better at lobbying than we are, but they just can overspend, and there is no questioning there, there's no scrutiny. We are scrutinised left, right and centre. I'm very proud of the services that Conwy delivered, despite the fact that we've made savings. Talk about cuts and salami slicing. We are doing our best to deliver excellent services. I think we recognise it as leaders in many of these services, including the managing of waste. I think we're the lead authority in Wales when it comes to managing waste. So we should be very proud of what we're doing despite the savings we've had to endure. So, yeah, we need to take note of the Wales audit, but then we need to put the case back to Welsh Government that these are the reasons why some of our services are not as efficient or not as good because of the funding we have. So, and the point that Anne made about lobbying Welsh Government and Assembly members, all Cabinet members have written to the Assembly members and ministers. Once we heard what the indicative budget was, we all wrote to the relevant Cabinet members down in the Assembly, the relevant officers. So we have lobbied, and we will continue to lobby. So I think there's a lot of good comments made in here, but there's also quite a bit of hot air as well.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. Did you get any response from the individual Cabinet members? And has it changed their formula, their minds financially? No. Oh, fine. Okay. That says it all, doesn't it? Okay. Last person to speak, Councillor Shan.
Just quickly,
The hero
how to
Conway.
follow that. All I was going to say was like Councillor Anne, I'd welcome a Welsh Minister to come up and speak to us all, answer questions we've got. If we can help with that lobbying that the Cabinet members are doing, it's absolutely important, because from my point of view, and this is my only me because I'm not on the Cabinet or anything, we just had a gold level crisis and I saw nothing from the Welsh Government, no help. When we haven't had water for 24 hours and Welsh Water couldn't provide any, we got nothing. And at the end of the day, I've emailed, I haven't had not one response. So I welcome a Welsh Minister to talk about how we can try and help with the funding. I know that this crisis isn't in this meeting, but you know, from my point of view, we're either ignored, not thought about, or they don't understand the area. And I personally would like somebody to come answer some questions.
Thank you, Councillor Shan. Yes, I know you suffered particularly badly in Conway then. Thank you for all your work, because you were the first area to go off, weren't you? And your people have really suffered, but thank you for everything you've coordinated and for that statement. So we've come to the end of the people that want to speak. So we've got Councillor Anne was going to put another recommendation. Councillor Anne, would you like to repeat it so Kerry and I can capture what you've said?
Okay, I'll turn my camera off. I'd like to make 3 proposals, Chair. The first one is to write to the First Minister requesting a strategic review of local government funding. And I think with marketing around that and sharing that publicly, and also simultaneously write to the local government minister for us, inviting them to attend a meeting, if not with full council, if that's not appropriate, to perhaps group leaders, to sort of make that maybe a more managing meeting. So 2 letters I'm suggesting we write. The second proposal is that we invite Carmarthenshire, representatives from Carmarthenshire, to address us on their approach, which seems to be the only approach to financial resilience that gets any sort of commendation from Welsh Audit Office. And then the third thing is that we revisit, in the light of these 2 reports, our Conway Resilience Plan, and perhaps ask Councillor Emily and Amanda, who I think is our transformational change manager, to chair a meeting with councillors, and that we do that in a sort of private informal meeting, so that we really look at the robustness and the pace of change that's within the plan, that will therefore help us to move forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for those 3 proposals, Councillor Anne. Councillor Gareth, pop your microphone on, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to second all 3.
Second that. That's lovely. Thank you very much. So we've got those 3 proposals. We're going to take those first. Proposed by Councillor Anne, seconded by Councillor Gareth. Oh, yes, you can indeed, Reen.
Just for the purpose of clarity, I take it that you're asking for the letters to be written. You're asking Cabinet to write the letters, yeah?
I was actually thinking about asking for you and Charlie. I think it should be the letter should be from the 2 of you.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is we need clarity as to who. So it's a request for. I would suggest it's a request to Cabinet from this committee because it is a scrutiny committee of cabinet. So I would suggest there's an ask to cabinet to consider writing on these proposals, because otherwise we won't have any certainty. So that would be, because I'm just looking at the recommendations we have here. This report isn't going to cabinet, it's going to audit. So if there's an ask of cabinet, that needs to be clear. I'm just making the point about that.
I'm not particularly concerned about it going to cabinet for authorisation, Reen, unless you say that's absolutely imperative. I think as member of Finance and Resources, I think we can make a recommendation, and it's up to yourself and Charlie whether to either agree with that or to challenge it back, I would assume.
To be clear, to be clear, I'm not suggesting that the report goes to cabinet at all.
Nor am I.
All I'm saying is there needs to be clarity as to the ask about where it goes. Yeah, and I would suggest, as this is a scrutiny committee of cabinet, that ask goes to cabinet and ultimately to Charlie. If the request is for Charlie and me to write, then I guess that request goes to cabinet, I would suggest.
But a point of order, should that letter go from the scrutiny committee if they so desire?
Sorry, Councillor Conway, say that again.
To go from you as chairman, if the scrutiny committee decide to write to all those letters, it's up to you as a scrutiny committee to follow up on them.
Surely, if it's the will of this committee to write those, and it should come from the whole council, shouldn't just come from this committee.
Chair, my proposal was, my proposal, just to be clear, I think it's for the leader of this council and the chief executive of this council. Those are the two most appropriate people, in my view, to be writing those sorts of letters. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I was asking for clarification. No issue with who or how. It's just that we're clear on the recommendation. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks.
Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, but I think it should be clear in the letter that it's with, if it's passed, that it's with the support of the FROSC Scrutiny Committee. So that, you know, the message we want to give is that, yeah, we're all really concerned about this and we want to support you and the cabinet on this matter.
Lovely, thank you. So we've had a proposal, we've had a seconder. Could we show, please? Could everybody in favour of this proposal show? Please. So, put your microphone on, please, Councillor.
So is that you're asking us to vote on all three of the letters? What if we only want one of the letters or two, or no?
Councillor Anne has put 3 recommendations forward, and we're taking them all as once. But if you would prefer to vote individually on each one, Councillor Hannah, we're happy to do that.
No, going to Councillor Anne is allowed to propose what she wishes to propose.
Sorry, so that
Councillor Anne is allowed to propose what she wishes to propose.
And we're going to vote on, thank you very much. So we'll move to the vote. We've had the proposal, we've had the second. Could you show in the room, please? In favour, 1, 2, 3. 3 in room. Online. 3 online. We've got 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And those against, please. No one against. Any? Oh, hang on. So, Councillor Tristan against. Okay. Against. And those abstaining. That's as Hannah and Nia abstain. 2 in the room and 2 online. So that is carried, members. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. We now move to item 7A, delivery of the corporate procurement strategy, pages 86 to 120. Councillor Chris Kate is going to introduce this as a cabinet member for audit policy and performance, and Sinead Parry, head of audit and procurement, is going to present the reports. Welcome both.
Okay. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. This strategy, as we all know, was adopted by us in June 2023 as all the new legislation and codes of practice developed, and it sets out the council's key procurement priorities through to 2028. As such, it improves the management of the external spend on goods, services, and works, and is a fundamental plank supporting our corporate plan. So we know we're in challenging times, Chair, and we need to maximise the social, environmental, and economic benefit to our communities when we award our contracts. Making procurement more accessible to local businesses is a vital part of this as well as upholding the high ethical standards and concentrating on our aims to reduce carbon emissions. So this report flags up the fact that this council spends in excess of £200 million on suppliers and third parties, and shows our priority areas with a brief overview. Well, actually, it's more than a brief overview of the progress achieved. I want to thank Sinead Parry on my left, Head of Audit and Procurement, and Anthony Mason, and our corporate procurement team for bringing this all together for us today. But I want to emphasise, Chair, that the strategy delivery has to be the responsibility of all officers and members of our local authority. The review today and challenge is important, especially as we try to identify new opportunities to deliver efficiencies. We've just been alluding to that in the debate just before this one, but we want to still ensure high ethical practice. So hand over to the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. Sinead, welcome.
Bore da, diolch, Cadeirydd. One of the priorities in the corporate procurement strategy approved in June 23 is ensuring compliance with the governance arrangements across the authority. One of the measures of success of this priority is the publishing of an annual procurement report, providing assurance and oversight to the Council's FROSC and leadership team, hence the report. The report summarises the work undertaken by the procurement service in 23-24. Apologies and bringing it to report late, but committee timetable has been busy and consequently delayed the report coming to you. Included in the report is a brief overview of each of the 6 key priorities outlined in the strategy and progress made in delivering on the key priorities in 23-24. Members are asked to note the work undertaken, and both Anthony, the Corporate Procurement Manager, and myself are more than happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you, diolch.
Diolch, Sinead, and thank you for all the work that you've both and the team done on this. So we'll open up to questions. Members, what questions have we? You've exhausted yourselves. Oh, no, here we go. Councillor Paul and Councillor Neer. Oh, we'll take Councillor Neer first as committee member, then Councillor Paul.
Thank you very much for this report, Sinead. I'll give everyone a minute. Thank you for the report. The procurement strategy is complex but very interesting. Looking forward, is it possible to have a report explaining how we as a county procure food and drink for our schools so that we can see if we're doing enough locally? Although we as a county spend over £200 million on suppliers, in a perfect world, we would spend every penny within the county, but obviously that's not possible for practical reasons. But I think it's important that we do know how much money is spent locally. I think we should start with our schools possibly, and in a period where we are so aware of net zero and so on, and all the other environmental things that we should be considering, is it possible to lower the food miles so that we can complete 2 things, promoting the local economy as much as we can and help the environment? Thank you. Thank you. Schools are responsible for their own expenditure. They don't come under us, but we are trying to promote that they buy locally every time. we've been on a workshop with the Welsh officer to promote that kind of expenditure to ensure that we as an authority do spend locally. Thank you.
You could thank Councillor Nia. Thank you. And you didn't mention water miles once. Well done. Thank you. Next, Councillor Paul and Councillor Anne online. Councillor Paul.
I've got two questions. Certainly as a councillor, the only grief that I've had over the year that this report refers to, and I got a lot of grief, both from school transport providers and the recipients of school transport, children and parents. And as I say, there was a lot of grief for a period about what was going on. This report doesn't really capture those issues at the time, and so that's a concern to me. But I also would want to ask, have we now resolved those issues and difficulties in relation to procurement of school transport, or are they ongoing? So that's the first question. And the second question relates to paragraph 6.2 in the document. I'll just read that sentence. It says, the achievement of the strategy's priorities will require support from across the council and a buy-in from the council's senior management team and strategic leadership team. So that poses the question to me, which I'll ask it, does the procurement team think they got buy-in from the senior management team and the strategic leadership team? Because I suppose the only evidence that I've got that maybe they're not prioritizing it enough and got a grip of it is, as Sinead shared with us, this report coming to scrutiny has been delayed because it wasn't prioritized to go on an agenda. And that would be a concern to me. So are the procurement team feeling that this buy-in from the professional leadership is there?
Thank you, Councillor Paul. The first one, Sinead, about school transport.
Yes, Councillor Paul, as regards the school transport, internal audit were involved and have looked into it, and where the issues, if there were issues, they have been addressed. As to your second point, we do have support of both SMT and SLT. Just for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I asked them for support in requesting information in completion of data in readiness for the new contracts register, and that has been actioned. I've had full support all the way along, and I have throughout since I've been in post. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Thank you, Sinead. Councillor Anne online, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report, Sinead. Quite a lot to get our teeth into. And I think for me, what sort of jumps out here is what Councillor Chris says in his statement on page 88, and that is that £200 million per annum is spent in this regard, which in essence means over the course of this term for us as councillors, that means we're talking about £1 billion that's in scope in terms of is it delivering value for money and meeting all of our needs. So it's against the context of that I ask the sort of following questions. And the first one is about training. I think throughout the report you talk about the importance of contract management training for key members of staff. And of course that will be the people who will be commissioning the sort of £1 billion spend over the 5-year sort of term. So now that your strategy is in place, and this is a historic report in reality, can you give us assurance that all people who have been identified as required to be trained in this regard have received the training, and indeed that there is within the HR reporting system that contract management training is something that is in there that can be reported on. And I ask this question because historically, when we've had reports about staff training, quite often some of the key elements of staff training, there's been gaps across different departments, in particular in relation to health and safety, and sometimes even in relation to safeguarding. So can you give us assurance that your training is set up, it's been delivered, and there's an appropriate monitoring system, and give us assurance that the 2 new members of staff that you've employed, that they're actually now fully competent? So that's my first question. I've got a couple of others, so if I could perhaps ask them in sequence. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anne Shoned.
Yes, training for officers that deal with contracts on a day-to-day basis. There is currently a biannual training session delivered by a senior procurement officer. We've also got we resurrected the Procurement and Contracts Forum, which meets as and when is necessary, and where we share training and also any good practices, or address issues where they arise. We've also undertaken the 2 new members of staff. We did try and enrol them on the Welsh Government funded SIPS programme. Unfortunately, it was oversubscribed, so they weren't successful this year. We'll try again next year. They have undertaken the knowledge drops and all the current training that we've got available, so they are up to speed and confident in their training. We've also shared the training with all the members of the procurement forum and asked them to distribute to those offices that undertake contract management. Any other training? And Anthony at the moment is undertaking his SIPS training as well. So yes, we're lots of training going on, especially with the new legislation. There's been a considerable amount of training provided by the Welsh Government. We've also had a member from the Welsh Government come to talk to both SLT and the Procurement Forum as well about the new legislation. Thank you.
So if we were to audit our training records this afternoon, would that in essence say that we're 100% compliant in terms of the staff training that's been delivered?
The procurement training, the contracts module training is not currently mandatory, so there is no record of officers.
Right. Is that something that we can be looking to be recording and reporting upon, therefore?
I can make inquiries with our HR department.
Thanks, Sean, because I think that's really important that we retain a life. It's £1 billion of spend that's in scope. Okay, thanks for that. The second question is about the Tech One system, which is our new finance system. Again, there's references throughout the report to that. And can you maybe just give us an up-to-date picture of where Tech One is in terms of delivering for you and the aims that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, we're currently testing the contracts management module on Tech One and finishing off any configuration requirements, and then we're looking to go live with that system hopefully mid-February, depending on whether we get all the contract data from each department in time and quality check that before it goes uploaded.
Okay, that's good news. Good news. And then the final question.
Could you turn your camera
on page 99? On page 99, which is the procurement strategy delivery plan. I presume this is an ongoing document that's not sort of reached the end of its life. And one is just a request, really. I found it very difficult to understand what's been delivered, because lots of the timescales are ongoing, and there's a lot of narrative that you can't actually see that there's a recognition of completion. So I just wondered if we could remove the word ongoing and perhaps have milestones, and perhaps under the various sections, when there's clearly subsections that we could be picking out and we can look at delivery more clearly, that could be identified within the plan. So it's just a form formatting thing. For me, I found it difficult to understand. Is this a green plan or an amber plan or a red and an amber plan? So it's just taking that point. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anne.
Certainly. Yes, I'll take your comments on board, Councillor Anne. But just for information, a lot of the legislation, the secondary legislation isn't in place, so it is a moving feast at the moment. So it is difficult to, it is ongoing in effect until we know more firm information. So yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
And again,
Oh, you've gone there, Councillor Anne. You okay? Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. We've got Councillor Gareth and Councillor David online. Councillor Gareth.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. In your report under 2.3, it says that you're having difficulty extrapolating some of the data that you require. So I was just wondering, is that likely to cause any risks that we need to know about? And my second question is, have we done a review of who's actually using who's actually actioning the purchasing, the procurements, and who they're procuring on behalf? Because, you know, it's just sprung to mind with the school transport. It seems the school transport is procured by ERF, yet is a service that's delivered for the education. And, you know, is that the most effective and most cost-effective way of doing it? And is that happening across other parts of the organisation? Thank you.
Can you repeat the first question again, please?
Yeah. On page 93 of your report, 2.3, it says that you've had difficulties in extrapolating the data from the new financial system. And I just wondered, you know, without the data, is that possibly causing us some risks anywhere that we should know about?
As the report said, this date is going back to 23-24, and when in October, from the 1st of October to the 2nd of October 24, we moved on to the new financial system. So there were, in the beginning, there were difficulties in extrapolating the data from the new system, but moving forward, then no, there won't be any risk to the data. Thank you. And yeah, on the second one, Anthony will answer that one. Thank you.
Yeah, just it's a historical arrangement really that ERF procure homeschool transport, that they're responsible for passenger carrying transport. I think over the years, as the corporate team has become smaller, the procurement functions devolved out to the departments, and that they've taken over responsibility for it. But we're hoping going forward, now that we have the corporate contracts registered, we'll have more oversight over what's required in the departments, and then we'll be able to have more input over how that's procured in the future.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was getting at. You know, it's got to be the position we're in has got to be the most effective and most efficient way of doing it. And we obviously need to look at these on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Growing, was it on this point you wanted to come in, or
Well,
was it general point?
Whole school transport has been raised by more than one councillor now. The ERF procure the whole school transport in line with the policies and the children identified by education. I think the reason why it's been with ERF is because we also coordinate the public transport of buses and the like. Whether it is the best system, I don't know, but that's certainly why the why the ERF procure the service on behalf of education.
Thank you, Councillor Gromley, for that. Okay, we've got Councillor David online, then we're going to the vote. Thank you. Councillor David.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask, is value for the money at the heart of everything that is done, and how do they monitor that? On homeschool transport, on numerous occasions, I've spoken to people that provide the taxi service. I spoke to taxi drivers, and it's the same story. They turn up to pick a student to take them to school, and the student's not going to go that day. They're not informed of that, but they still get paid. I mean, are there any measures going to put in with the schools and with the parents to make sure that if we're paying for a taxi to go to pick a student up to take them to school, they're actually there and they're going to be going that day? Thank you.
Councillor David, yeah, I think the nature of the contract is it wouldn't be fair on the taxi firms. I presume what Sinead is going to say, it wouldn't be fair on the taxi firms if we procured them and then just because a pupil was ill or unable to go, then that firm didn't get paid. No, nothing would work like that. Sinead's nodding, I think, yes. Lovely, thank you.
Can I just come back on that, Chair? Because what's happening is the schools, no one's letting them know. I mean, obviously, if a child's ill, fine, it should be reported, then the taxi won't turn up to pick them up. But that's not happening, and that's. And I've had numerous sort of complaints about that. Saying so, really, you know, in an ideal world, the taxi, of course, the taxi should be paid if they turn up. But why are they turning up when the child's not going to go to school? Shouldn't the school take some responsibility to let the service know that the child's not going to school, and the parents as well? And that's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Thanks. I know from speaking to parents of children that go to the pupil referral units, it's often a very last minute thing that the young people won't get in the taxi for a variety of social and anxiety reasons. But Councillor Gromway is going to come in and answer. Councillor Gromway, we've kept you busy this morning.
It's very often, you know, not on the day that parent or child may decide that they don't need to use the service. But how education get that information to the taxi service when they're already en route before they even know that the child may not be attending?
You content, Councillor David?
Well, yeah, but sometimes they would know, wouldn't they? They would know sometimes, and you know, it's not going to be a last minute thing on every occasion. What I'm saying, if the parent or the child makes the decision that the child doesn't go to school that day, and the decision is made, certainly then somebody should be informed, or the school should inform the people providing the service. Obviously, if the taxi is on its way, you know, no one's disputing that they should be paid, but it doesn't always happen that way, and that's my concerns, that taxis turn up at the home and then the pupil's not going to school, and really, in some cases, they could be forewarned, couldn't they? And I was going to ask what kind of system's in place. Is there a system in place? Perhaps Gromway could answer for that to happen if the day before, or the parent could actually let the school or someone know, and then they could actually let the people providing the service know. Because I don't think that's happening, you know, every time, is it? That's what I'm trying to say.
But maybe we could ask about this in the education committee, in terms of, because we're considering the procurement this morning. So, you know, maybe that's a forum for another question, Councillor David, but thank you very much for that. Councillor Hannah, you next, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm extremely pleased to see the use of Bonninant as the case study. It is a jewel in Ross-on-Sea, and I would thoroughly recommend members and anyone who happens to be watching to pop there, have toasted tea cake. They do it. It's the service is exemplary there. The people that are undergoing training do a really good job, and the staff are wonderful. So I'm just pleased to see that it got another mention in one of our reports. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful facility. Councillor Hannah, yes, I think it's one Councillor Louise is particularly proud of during her reign as the cabinet. Oh, your face is in there. Oh, marvellous. One reason not to read the report, yeah. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Sinead and Anthony. Really appreciate that. We now move to the recommendations, and I'd like a proposer and a second, please. Oh, Councillor Hannah proposed, Councillor Nia second. Would everyone like to show on this, please? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on. I've got 6 online and 6 online. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you very much, members. Thank you to all officers and all members. Thank you. And to member of the public. Thank you. Diolch, everyone.